It was a quiet Saturday morning in the small town of Denton, Texas, when Ricky Barnett woke up to the sound of his dog, Max, barking furiously at the back window. The sun was just creeping over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Ricky rubbed his eyes, groggy from a late night of binge-watching his favorite crime series, and shuffled to the window to see what had Max so riled up. He expected to see a squirrel or maybe a stray cat, but what he saw instead stopped him cold. The community pond, the heart of their neighborhood, was shrinking. The water, usually sparkling under the morning light, was draining away, leaving behind a muddy, cracked bed that looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Ricky blinked, thinking maybe he was still half asleep. The pond had been there for decades, a little slice of nature nestled between the tidy rows of suburban homes. It was where kids caught tadpoles, where old-timers like Mr. Garland sat with fishing poles, and where beavers built their dams with a stubborn pride that made everyone smile. But now, it was vanishing and fast. He grabbed his phone, snapped a quick picture, and sent it to his neighbor, Sarah, with a simple message. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah's reply came within seconds. "HOA. They're draining it. Meeting at 10 a.m. Ricky's stomach churned. The Homeowners Association? The same group that nitpicked about lawn heights and mailbox colors? What gave them the right to touch the pond? He threw on a t-shirt and jeans, grabbed a coffee, and headed out to the community center, Max trotting at his heels, still grumbling about whatever had set him off. By the time Ricky arrived, the community center was packed. Neighbors he hadn't seen in months were there, their faces a mix of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Sarah, a fiery single mom who never backed down from a fight, was already at the front, her arms crossed and her voice sharp as she grilled the HOA president, Linda Voss. Linda, a woman in her late 50s with a perm that hadn't changed since the 80s, stood behind a folding table, clutching a clipboard like it was a shield. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," Linda said, her voice strained. This was a necessary maintenance decision. The pond was becoming a health hazard: mosquitoes, algae, you name it. "We hired professionals to drain it and treat it with herbicides to ensure it's safe." "Safe?" Sarah shot back, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "You call killing off every fish, frog, and beaver in that pond safe? Did you even ask us? Did you get permits? Because I'm pretty sure you need those." The room erupted in shouts. Mr. Garland, a retired biology teacher with a white beard and a penchant for wearing fishing vests, stood up, his hands trembling. That pond was home to an entire ecosystem. Blue herons, turtles, even a family of beavers that been there for years. "You didn't just drain a pond, Linda, you destroyed a habitat." Linda's face reddened, but she held her ground. The cost was $70,000, and it came out of the HOA budget. We didn't have time to wait for a vote. The board made an executive decision. $70,000? Ricky blurted, unable to hold back. For what? To turn our pond into a mud pit? Who approved that kind of money? The crowd roared in agreement, and Linda's clipboard shook in her hands. As the meeting spiraled into chaos, Ricky stepped outside to clear his head. He walked back toward the pond, now little more than a shallow puddle surrounded by cracked earth. A dead fish lay stranded in the mud, its scales glinting dully in the sun. He felt a pang of guilt, like he'd failed to protect something precious. He wasn't alone. Neighbors started trickling out, some taking pictures, others just staring in stunned silence. A few kids stood at the edge, poking sticks into the muck, their faces confused. One of them, a girl named Mia, looked up at Ricky with wide eyes. "Where'd the beavers go?" she asked. "I don't know, kid," Ricky said, his voice tight. "But we're going to find out." By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. Sarah had started a group chat that exploded with messages. People shared photos of the dying pond, stories about the wildlife they'd loved, and theories about what the HOA was hiding. Someone dug up an old email from Linda mentioning maintenance concerns, but there'd been no specifics, no vote, no warning. Ricky, who'd never been much for social media, found himself scrolling through posts on the neighborhood's private group where outrage was boiling over. One post claimed the herbicides used were toxic to more than just algae, potentially seeping into the groundwater. Another said the beavers had been spotted downstream, disoriented and struggling to find a new home. That evening, Ricky and Sarah met at her place to strategize. Her kitchen table was covered in papers printouts of environmental regulations, HOA bylaws, and a petition she'd already started. "This isn't just about a pond," Sarah said, her eyes blazing. "It's about power. They think they can do whatever they want because we've let them get away with it for years." Ricky nodded, sipping his coffee. "But what can we do? They've already drained it. The damage is done." "Not all of it," Sarah said. "We can stop them from making it worse. And we can make them answer for it. I've got a friend at the city council, and she says this might violate environmental laws. We need to push for an investigation." The next day, the community's outrage took shape. Sarah and Ricky organized a protest at the pond, and by mid-morning, nearly 100 people showed up, holding signs that read "Save Our Pond" and "HOA Accountability Now." Local news crews arrived, drawn by the viral posts flooding social media. A reporter interviewed Mr. Garland, who spoke passionately about the ecological devastation. "This wasn't just a pond," he said, his voice cracking. "It was a home for creatures that can't speak for themselves. And now it's gone." The protest wasn't without tension. Linda and a few HOA board members showed up, trying to defend their decision. "We're protecting the community," Linda shouted, her voice drowned out by boos. A man in a suit, introduced as the contractor who'd overseen the draining, tried to explain the herbicide use, but his jargon-heavy excuses only fueled the crowd's anger. Things nearly turned physical when a neighbor accused the contractor of dumping chemicals illegally, and police had to step in to keep the peace. As the days passed, the saga grew more heated. The city launched an investigation into the HOA's actions, prompted by Sarah's petition, which had garnered over 1,000 signatures. Environmental experts confirmed the herbicides posed risks to local wildlife and possibly the groundwater, raising alarms about long-term consequences. A local biologist, Dr. Emily Chun, volunteered to assess the damage and found that the pond's ecosystem had been all but obliterated. "It'll take years to recover, if it ever does," she told a packed town hall meeting. This wasn't maintenance, it was destruction. But the HOA wasn't backing down. Linda released a statement claiming the board had acted in the community's best interest, citing vague safety concerns and promising to explore restoration options. Few believed her. Rumors swirled that the draining was tied to a shady deal with a developer eyeing the land for a new project. Others speculated the HOA was trying to cut costs by avoiding future maintenance, regardless of the ecological cost. The lack of transparency only deepened the distrust. For Ricky, the fight became personal. He'd grown up fishing in that pond with his dad, long gone now. Those memories were tied to the water, the herons, the beavers. Every time he passed the empty pond, he felt a knot in his chest. He started attending every HOA meeting, demanding answers. At one, he confronted Linda directly. "You keep saying this was for us, but who did you ask? Where's the proof this was necessary?" Linda's response was evasive. "We consulted experts," she said, refusing to name them. The room groaned, and Ricky felt a surge of frustration. He wasn't a lawyer or an activist, just a guy who liked his quiet neighborhood and his morning walks with Max. But this felt like a betrayal, not just of him, but of everyone who called this place home. The tension reached a boiling point at a city council meeting 2 weeks later. The room was packed, standing room only, with residents, environmentalists, and even a few curious outsiders who'd heard about the saga online. Sarah presented the petition, backed by Dr. Chen's report, which detailed the catastrophic impact on the pond's ecosystem. She didn't hold back, accusing the HOA of negligence and possible corruption. "This isn't just about a pond," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "It's about who gets to decide what happens to our community. We trusted the HOA, and they betrayed us." The crowd erupted in applause, but the HOA's lawyer, a slick man named Greg Harmon, countered with a polished defense. "The board acted within its rights," he said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The pond was a liability, and the HOA took decisive action to protect residents. Restoration plans are already in motion." "Restoration? Mr. Garland scoffed from the audience. "You can't just pour water back in and call it fixed. The beavers are gone, the fish are dead, and the birds have nowhere to land. You can't restore trust, either." The meeting stretched late into the night, with arguments flying back and forth. The council promised a full investigation, including a review of the HOA's finances and permits. But for many, it felt like too little, too late. The pond was gone, and with it, a piece of the community's heart. As weeks turned into months, the saga took on a life of its own. Social media kept the story alive, with hashtags like Save Denton Pond trending locally. A group of residents, led by Sarah, filed a lawsuit against the HOA, alleging violations of environmental laws and HOA bylaws. The case was slow-moving, but it gave people hope. Meanwhile, volunteers, including Ricky and Mr. Garland, started a cleanup effort, removing debris from the pond bed and planting native grasses to stabilize the soil. It wasn't much, but it felt like a start. One evening, as Ricky stood by the empty pond, watching the sunset cast long shadows over the cracked earth, Sarah joined him. "You think we'll ever get it back?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Ricky shrugged. "I don't know, but we're not giving up. Not on the pond, not on this place. They don't get to win." Sarah nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. Damn right. The fight was far from over, but the community had found its voice. The pond, once a quiet backdrop to their lives, had become a symbol of something bigger, a battle for accountability, for nature, for the right to have a say. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ricky felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could make things right. But the questions lingered, as sharp and unresolved as the cracked earth beneath their feet. Was the HOA's decision really about safety, or was there something darker at play? Money, power, or a hidden agenda? Could the pond ever be restored, or was the damage too deep? And what did it say about their community that it took a crisis like this to bring them together? What do you think? Was the HOA hiding something, or were they just incompetent? Should the community keep fighting, or is it time to move on? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this story got you fired up, and subscribe for more stories that dig into the heart of what makes a community tick. Let's keep this conversation going.